The Astounding Broccoli Boy by Frank Cottrell Boyce. The night city, fragile as a set of fairy lights on a velvet carpet, just hoping that no one will tread on them. Who takes care of the sleeping? I tried to make Tommy Lee follow me back to the Moonlight Delight, but just as we were about to cross the road, a big red bus came past, a London bus, open at the back. I'd never seen one of those up close before. With the yellow bus light behind them, the people on the top deck looked like faces in a stained glass window. I was so busy looking at them that I didn't notice Tommy Lee had stepped onto the platform of the bus and was trundling away from me down the street. I had to run, grab the pole and swing myself on, like a Route Master Spider-Man. There was no one else on the lower deck. Tommy Lee stood there holding the pole, while the bus breathed diesel in our faces as we wandered around the London streets. Finally we drifted into a park. On one side of the road, everything was dark. On the other was a row of big white houses, like massive wedding cakes. While the bus was still moving, Tommy Lee stepped off and walked into the dark. I'd been pushed off moving buses so often that actually jumping off one was easy. I ran after Tommy Lee and stuck as close to him as I could, even when he walked right through the middle of a hedge. Branches whipped my face and leaves tangled in my hair. On the other side was a muddy bank. I lost my footing and slithered down it into a stream. My toes curled into the warm mud at the bottom. Tommy Lee stood still in the middle of the stream, like a moose in pyjamas. I thought about saying his name to wake him up, but he eventually slooshed through the water to the other side and grabbed hold of a wire fence to help him out. The moment he grabbed hold of that fence, his head jerked back like he'd been shot. A couple of seconds later, another jerk, then another. But he didn't let go. "Tommy Lee," I hissed. "Tommy Lee." He woke up and said, "Ow." And then he said, "Ow," again. "Tommy Lee, I think that's an electric fence you're holding." "Ow. You should probably let go of it, Tommy Lee." He shook his hand off the fence and stopped being in pain. I could feel some force. I thought it was coming out of me, not going into me. Where are we? I didn't know the answer, but I knew how to get over an electrified fence. All you have to do is lie something over it that doesn't conduct electricity, like a log or a piece of carpet, and walk across it. There was a big notice saying, "Danger, electricity," on a wooden stand stuck into the bank. Tommy Lee yanked it out of the ground and plonked it over the fence. We tiptoed over. In front of us was a wide field with 2 trees at the far end and a big tyre swinging from the lowest branch of one of the trees. Tommy Lee immediately wanted to use the tyre for kicking practice, but as we got nearer, a security light flashed on and the shadows of the branches danced across the grass like claws. We ducked down. In the blaze of the security light we could see there was another, stronger fence with a gate in it, and beyond that a little house. A man with a bucket slung over his arm came out of the house. He stopped and peered into the bright cone that came from the security light. He didn't see us though, and after a while he moved off. Tommy Lee walked up to the gate in the fence. There was a keypad next to it, just like the ones in the hospital. He punched a few numbers into it, and the gate squeaked open. He didn't even seem to think that was unusual. The little house had a roof of corrugated iron painted blue. Its door was metal, thick and heavy, and it was bolted on the outside. "Don't need any superpowers to open this one," said Tommy Lee. "If you're on the outside," I said, "but if you were inside you'd never get out." We thought for a minute about why you would have a door with a bolt on the inside. No, we didn't. We thought for a minute about why you would have a door with a bolt on the outside. "A prisoner," I said. "Someone is being held prisoner in there." I didn't expect Tommy Lee to be interested in prisoners. I expected him to say, "Okay, let's go and find a bank to rob." But he didn't. He started yanking on the bolt. "What are you doing?" "Setting them free, of course. Rescuing him. Come on, give me a hand. I hate it when people lock other people up." Tommy Lee drew back the bolt. We both pulled on the door, and a smell of damp smacked us in the nose. Inside it was surprisingly light, because the front wall was nearly all window. Moonlight was flooding in. The floor was covered with straw, and in the corner there was a huge pile of sliced apples and a bit of banana. I somehow knew that this was what the man had had in his bucket. He'd dumped it there for the poor prisoner. The straw rustled. Someone was moving underneath it. Some poor soul trying to get comfortable on the concrete floor. Some of the straw fell aside and we saw a hairy hand. A very hairy and very massive hand. Long grey fingers and a wrist as thick as my waist. With my eyes I followed the arm up to the shoulder. There was no neck, just a huge head with a massive jaw and a frowning forehead. "We've rescued you," announced Tommy Lee. "You can come out now." "Tommy Lee," I said, "that's not a prisoner. That is a gorilla." Just like Tommy Lee, the gorilla woke up when it heard its name. The second it heard the word gorilla, it propped its head up against the wall and blew down its huge nostrils. Bits of straw and mucus whirred into the air. "Can't be," said Tommy Lee. Quick as teleportation, the gorilla was up, shoulders like a train, head like a cannonball, leaning towards us on its knuckles. "What are we going to do?" whispered Tommy Lee. "Shall I kick it?" "What? No, who would kick a gorilla?" Its lips rolled back like lino, showing big yellow teeth. "Don't look at him," I breathed. "How can you not look at him? He's amazing." Tommy Lee is afraid of the dark, but apparently not of a cornered gorilla. He was scared of two cornered gorillas, though. The second one burst out of the straw behind the first one. It pounded the floor with its jackhammer fists, and screamed and screamed and screamed. Tommy Lee made as if to run, but I pulled him back. "There's no point running," I hissed. "They'll be faster." "What are we going to do?" "Look at the floor. Look only at the floor. Crouch down a bit. Try to make yourself smaller. Look like you're not a threat, like you're giving in." The moment we crouched down, the second one stopped screaming. The first one kept sniffing, though, and coming closer to get a better smell. Tommy Lee almost jumped up. I pulled him down again. "If you stand up, that's a threat. Stay down. Do what I do." "How do you know? Who are you to tell me what to do?" "I'm someone who has a lot of experience when it comes to being threatened by creatures bigger than himself. Get down, stay down, shuffle backwards out the door." Tommy Lee followed me. The gorillas didn't. We shut and bolted the door, then sank to our knees and looked up at the big fat moon. We could hear the gorillas scuffling around inside, probably going back to bed. "What were they?" said Tommy Lee. "What do you mean, what were they? They were gorillas, wasn't it obvious?" "Gorillas aren't real." "What? Of course gorillas are real. You just nearly had a fight with two of them." "Gorillas are made up, like dragons and reindeer." "Gorillas are real, and by the way, so are reindeer." "What? There are deer that can fly? Deer with light-up noses?" "Not exactly, but there are reindeer in Lapland and gorillas in Africa." "We're in Africa?" To be honest, I didn't know where we were, but I knew it wouldn't be wise to make Tommy Lee anxious, so I just shrugged and said, "Teleportation, isn't it?" The gorilla prison turned out to be in the middle of an island. There were trees full of little monkeys, another fence with a gate in it, then a deep stream. Tommy Lee opened the gate, we waded across the stream, and came to a pathway on the opposite bank. We found a small wooden hut at a place where the path split into three. The door of the hut was locked, but there was a kind of hatch at the front which we undid and then climbed through. Whoever lived there had unusual priorities. There was nothing to sit on, but there was a freezer full of ice creams and ice lollies. There was no TV, but there was a shelf of sweets and chocolates. No kitchen, but a big fridge packed with cans of Coke and lemonade. It was clearly the home of someone who had made some very unhealthy lifestyle choices. "Flake," said Tommy Lee, spotting a yellow Cadbury's box on the shelf. "Totally nut-free." He grabbed a fistful of the bars and started eating. I wasn't sure we should be eating other people's sweets, but before I could say anything, Tommy Lee sniffed. A big sniff. Then he rubbed the back of his sleeve over his nose, tucked up his knees and rested his forearm on them. Tommy Lee was crying. This was so hard to believe that I asked him, "Tommy Lee, are you crying?" "Leave me alone." "Come on, Tommy Lee. Superheroes don't cry. Or supervillains." "Leave me alone." He clambered over the hatch and walked off. I tried to go after him. I tried to call him back, but it was too dark to see which way he'd gone. In Don't Be Scared, Be Prepared, It tells you that if you ever get separated from your party, you should stay where you are so that they can come back and find you. If you go after them, you might both end up running around in circles, missing each other until one of you falls into the sinking sands or off the terrible cliffs or whatever. So I shouted, "Tommy Lee, I'll wait here for you," then went back into the hut. It was probably wrong to eat so much ice cream without permission, but there really wasn't anything else to do, and I had to stay awake or I might miss him. 2 magnums and a mini milk later, I was getting anxious. I sat out on the steps of the little hut and looked down the footpaths to see if he was coming. I could hear monkey chatter and strange bird calls. Sometimes something big would flutter past over my head. It felt like Africa, except that it was shockingly cold, and when I looked back towards the way we'd come, I could see a dark tower rising high above the trees, which looked like the hospital. So maybe we weren't in Africa, and maybe we hadn't been to China either. Maybe London was a magical city that had everything you could ever want in it. Wanderville. A shadow strode down the path towards me. For the first time in my life, I was pleased to see Tommy Lee. "I feel fantastic. Give me a flake." He crumbled a flake into his mouth. "You were right," he said. "Right about what?" "It's better to be a hero than a villain. I've just been a hero all over this place. All this time I've been thinking I'm only good at being bad. But I can be good when I want to." "Of course you can." "I can, can't I?" "You were never that bad, really." "Wasn't I?" "Actually, yeah, you were." "Well, now I've done some good stuff." I don't know why, but I found the thought of Tommy Lee trying to be good a bit worrying. I thought he probably didn't have the same idea of good as most people. "Tommy Lee," I said, "what have you done?" "Them gorillas. Think about them. Locked up in that little house. Why would anyone do that to them? Why should they be locked away just because they're big and scary? Big and scary people have hearts too, you know. Big and scary people have feelings. You do know that gorillas aren't people, don't you? That's no reason to lock someone up, just because they're not a person." A horrible, uneasy feeling began to crawl up my back. "So, what was this good thing you did?" "I let them out." "The gorillas." "Opened their door." "You opened the gorillas' door?" "And let them out. And there was a little bridge over the water with a gate on it. I opened that too. Now they can be free. We should find whoever locked them up and destroy them." "But I feel great. I wish I'd started doing this when I was younger." "We need to get out of here." "In a minute, just a minute." He leaned back against the wall of the little wooden hut and closed his eyes. "Tommy Lee, don't go to sleep. Not here." "I'm not going to sleep. I'm just resting my eyes." "No, Tommy Lee, no. You can't go to sleep. Not if there are gorillas on the loose." "Shh." He was asleep. I tried to tug him to his feet, but he just hedgehogged himself into the corner. I couldn't move him. I couldn't leave him. That was probably the worst bit of the whole thing. Being alone in the night with an unmovable friend and a gang of gorillas.